Everyone around us assumed I'd swallow it quietly like a defeated man. What they didn't know was that I was already done the moment she said his name, and the silence that followed would end everything she thought she knew about me. Before we go any further, do me a favor. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or calmly written off, hit subscribe, tap like, and drop a comment. You're going to want to remember this one. That Thursday evening started like any other workday ending too late. I pulled into the driveway just after sunset, the porch light already on, the house glowing warm and familiar. I remember thinking how quiet the neighborhood looked. Lawns trimmed, sprinklers ticking, the faint sound of a TV somewhere down the block. Normal, safe, predictable, the kind of life you build when you think you know exactly who you're building it with. I shut off the engine and sat there a moment longer than usual, fingers still on the wheel. 3 months of overtime had finally paid off. Late nights, skipped lunches, extra projects I didn't complain about. I told myself it was worth it. We were finally getting ahead. I even smiled to myself, thinking about the surprise I had lined up. Something big, something that said, "I choose us." I stepped inside, expecting the usual sounds. A show playing too loud, her voice from the kitchen, something half burned on the stove. Instead, the house felt hollow. No TV, no music, just a stillness that pressed against my ears. I set my work bag down slowly and called out her name, Rachel, but my voice echoed back unanswered. That's when I saw her in the kitchen, standing perfectly still, facing the window like she was watching a life that no longer included me. She turned around when I spoke again. Her face was pale, her expression tight and rehearsed. Not angry, not sad, controlled. The kind of look people wear when they've already made a decision and just need to inform you of it. "We need to talk," she said. Those 4 words carry weight when spoken like that. I nodded once, calm on the outside, even though something cold slid through my chest. I leaned against the counter and waited. She folded her arms, took a breath that sounded practiced, and said, "I think we should separate. No build-up, no hesitation, just a clean cut." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask her to explain herself right away. I just looked at her, trying to recognize the woman I'd married 3 years earlier. The woman who used to laugh too loud at bad jokes. The woman I trusted. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised even me. Steady. Flat. "Why?" She said it wasn't working anymore. That she'd been thinking about it for weeks, while I was staying late planning surprises, telling myself this phase was temporary. I asked her the question every man eventually asks in that moment. Is there someone else? She paused, just long enough. "It's not like that," she said quickly. "It's just, Mark needs help." Mark, her ex from college, a name I hadn't heard spoken out loud in years, a man she once described as ancient history. Apparently, history has a way of resurfacing when it's convenient. She told me his business had failed, that his divorce wiped him out, that he was struggling and needed support, and then she said the line that changed everything. "He needs me more than you do." I didn't interrupt her. I didn't argue. I watched her talk herself into righteousness, watched her convince herself this was noble instead of selfish. She said I was strong, successful, that I'd be fine without her, that Mark didn't have anyone else. That's when I realized something important. She wasn't asking my permission. She was announcing her exit. I reached into my pocket without thinking, fingers brushing against the keys I'd been carrying all day. The weight of them felt different now, heavier, useless. I looked at her one last time and said, "If that's what you want, then we're done talking." Her eyes widened. Maybe she expected a fight, tears, promises. Instead, she got silence. And silence, I would soon learn, is far more dangerous than anger. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was pacing or drowning in memories, but because the house felt unfamiliar in a way I couldn't explain. The same walls, the same furniture, the same faint creak in the hallway floor, but something essential had already left before she packed a single suitcase. Rachel moved through the bedroom quietly, opening drawers, closing them again, as if she was surprised by her own decision. I lay there on my side, eyes open, staring into the dark, listening to the soft rustle of a life being folded away. By morning, Half her closet was empty. She left a short note on the kitchen counter, written in that neat handwriting I used to admire. I'm staying with Mark for now. I hope you understand. No apology, no explanation. Just a period at the end, like the conversation was officially closed. I read it once, then dropped it into the trash without tearing it up. Some things don't deserve the effort. The silence after she left wasn't loud. It was clean. I made my own coffee, sat at the table, and watched steam rise from the mug while the sun crept through the blinds. For the first time in years, there was no tension in the air, no unspoken pressure to perform, explain, or reassure. I felt tired, yes, but not broken. Around noon, my neighbor Linda knocked on the door. She was retired, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. She didn't bother easing into it. I saw her leave with suitcases yesterday, she said. Everything all right? We're separating, I replied. Her eyebrows lifted, then slowly drew together. I figured something was off, she said after a pause. I didn't want to say anything before, but I've seen a man picking her up during the day. Different cars, always in a hurry. I thanked her for telling me and closed the door gently. I didn't need more details. The picture was already clear. While I was staying late at work, she was making time for someone else. Not accidentally, not impulsively, deliberately. That afternoon, I called an attorney named Daniel Harper. A colleague had recommended him years ago after his own divorce. Daniel didn't waste time with sympathy. He asked practical questions, gave straightforward answers, and told me what to expect. No kids, minimal shared assets, clean process. When I hung up, I felt something unexpected. Relief. That evening, I met my friend Chris at a bar downtown. We hadn't seen each other in months. He took one look at my face and said, "All right, what happened?" I told him the shortened version. No drama, just facts. His expression shifted from surprise to anger on my behalf. "She left you for her ex," he said flatly, and called it support. "That's one way to frame it," I replied. We talked for hours about everything except my marriage, sports, work, old stories from our 20s. I realized how long it had been since I'd laughed without checking someone else's mood first. When I got home, my phone showed missed calls from Rachel. I didn't listen to the messages. I ordered pizza, ate it straight from the box, and watched a movie she always called stupid. Sunday morning, I slept in, made pancakes, watched football with the volume up. My phone rang again, unknown number this time. A man introduced himself as Tom Walker, someone who used to work with Mark. He said Rachel had called him asking questions, trying to confirm Mark's story. "That's why I'm calling you," he said, "because none of it's true." He told me Mark's business hadn't failed, that he'd recently bought a new truck, that he was doing just fine. I thanked him and hung up, setting the phone down carefully. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Monday morning, I signed the paperwork to begin the divorce. On my way to work, I stopped at a coffee shop I'd never been to before, the kind Rachel always complained about. I ordered something unfamiliar, sat by the window, and watched people move through their lives without knowing mine had quietly reset. At work, I stayed focused, stayed late because I wanted to, not because I was avoiding home. My supervisor noticed, complimented my performance. For the first time in months, my mind felt clear. Thursday evening, Rachel finally got through when I answered the phone. Her voice sounded strained. She said things weren't what she expected, that Mark wasn't grateful, that things didn't add up. She said she might have made a mistake. I listened without interrupting. When she asked if she could come home, I said no. Just one word, no explanation. After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the quiet room. And that's when I understood something simple and permanent. Walking away doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like peace. The next few weeks blurred together in a way I never expected. There were no wild confrontations, no last-minute attempts at reconciliation. Just a steady stream of silence, punctuated by sporadic phone calls that I ignored. And in that silence, something strange began to happen. My life, which had felt out of control for so long, started to feel mine again. At first, the quiet was unsettling. No more nagging over where I'd left my keys or complaints about how I loaded the dishwasher wrong. No more asking me to change the channel or reminding me to turn down the music. It was just me, in a space I once shared with someone who was supposed to be my partner. It didn't feel sad. It didn't feel lonely. It just felt empty. I spent my evenings at the gym, hitting the weights harder than usual. I needed something to burn the anger, the confusion, the sense of betrayal that lingered in the pit of my stomach. The more I worked out, the more I realized how much I'd lost myself trying to keep her happy, trying to make everything right when it was already falling apart. But now, with the weight of the divorce process starting to settle in, I found a strange kind of freedom in the monotony of it all. Work was better. Much better. Without the constant tension at home, I was finally able to focus on the projects that had been stacking up for months. I wasn't distracted by endless text messages, late-night arguments, or worrying about what mood she'd be in when I walked through the door. I was sharp, productive. Even Beverly, my boss, commented on how much more focused I seemed. "Whatever you're doing," she said one afternoon, "keep it up. The clients love your presentations." That was the thing. I'd spent so much energy for years trying to balance a relationship that was never fully stable, that I forgot how good it felt to just be good at something again. It wasn't even about impressing anyone anymore. It was about proving to myself that I still had it in me. Friday night rolled around, and for the first time in months, I didn't have a single plan. No need to rush back to an empty house, no forced conversation over takeout. I called Lincoln, a friend from work I hadn't seen in forever, and asked if he wanted to grab dinner. His response was immediate. "About time you called. I was beginning to think she had you on a leash or something." We met at a steakhouse downtown, the kind of place Rachel would have said was too expensive for a casual night out. But for me, it was just right. The food was great, the drinks even better, and for the first time in what felt like years, I could actually enjoy the evening without thinking about what I was missing back home. We talked about everything: sports, work, old, friends, and for the first time since the separation, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. I didn't have to justify my decisions, my actions, or my feelings. It felt good to just be me again. As we ate, Lincoln mentioned Rachel. "How's she doing?" he asked casually. The question didn't catch me off guard, but it did make me pause. "I don't know," I said, swirling my wine around in my glass. "I stopped keeping track a while ago." "Well, I heard from a friend that she's really struggling," he said, lowering his voice a little. "Working 2 jobs, barely making rent." I took a deep breath, letting the news settle. I wasn't surprised. I figured she was scrambling to get by, trying to piece together a life she thought she could build without me. But hearing it from someone else hit differently. Lincoln, however, seemed almost sympathetic. "She's in a bad place, man," he said, a frown forming on his face. I looked at him and shook my head. "She made her choices. This is the result of them. I don't feel bad for her. I feel sorry for the person she used to be, but not for the person she is now." Lincoln looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I get it. You're right, but it doesn't mean it's easy." "It's not easy," I agreed, "but it's right." When I got home that night, the house was quiet again. The kind of quiet I had grown used to. My phone buzzed a few times, a couple of voicemails from Rachel that I didn't bother to listen to. Another message came through around midnight. "It's me. Can we talk?" I stared at the text for a while, unsure of what to do. My finger hovered over the screen. Maybe this was it. Maybe she'd finally come to her senses. But I wasn't ready to engage in that conversation. Not yet. Not when I still had so much to sort out for myself. I turned the phone over, face down, and went to bed. The next few days passed in a similar haze. I went through the motions, each day feeling more and more like I was living my life again. Work was better, the gym routine was becoming a ritual, and I even started cooking more at home. I didn't need to explain to anyone what I was doing or why. I just did it. I enjoyed it. And when the weekends came, I started taking time for myself. Long walks through the park, reading books I'd been putting off for years. I'd never realized how much I'd neglected my own wants and needs while trying to make someone else happy. But that didn't mean I was immune to the pull of the past. A week later, Rachel called again. This time, I answered, though I didn't want to. "I need to talk to you," her voice came through. shaky and uncertain. It was the tone I hadn't heard in months. I know I made a mistake. I listened but didn't say anything. I had nothing to say. I'd already heard it all before. I know I hurt you. I left for the wrong reasons, but I made a mistake. I've realized that. It was tempting to jump in, to argue, to demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I just let her speak, let the words hang in the air between us, knowing deep down that it was too late. "Where are you now?" I asked finally. "I'm still here," she said, her voice quieter now. "I'm just trying to figure things out." "Good luck with that," I said, then ended the call before she could say anything else. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindictive. I was just done. And in a strange way, that felt like the most peaceful decision I could have made. The divorce was moving forward, though it was slower than I wanted. Her lawyer was trying to drag things out, but I knew it was just a matter of time. There was nothing left to fight for. And every day that passed made me realize just how much better I was without the constant emotional weight she had brought into my life. A month later, I finally made a decision. I drove to the Tesla dealership, the same one I'd been to months ago, where I'd originally planned to surprise Rachel with a brand new car. The salesman greeted me with a smile, clearly remembering me. "You still looking for that model?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I've decided I want something different, something just for me." We spent the next couple of hours going through the options. In the end, I went with a midnight blue Model S, sleek, fast, and exactly what I wanted. It wasn't about showing off, it was about celebrating the person I had become without her. It was my way of telling myself that I had made it out the other side. That evening, I drove the new car home. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt a sense of finality. This was my life now. I had reclaimed it, and I was ready for whatever came next. But even as the engine hummed beneath me, I couldn't escape the feeling that this was just the beginning. The calls didn't stop after that. If anything, they multiplied. Morning, afternoon, late at night. Missed calls stacked on my screen like background noise I refused to acknowledge. I didn't block the number. I didn't need to. Silence was doing the work for me. Silence has a way of forcing people to sit alone with the consequences they've been trying to escape. About 6 weeks after she left, Linda knocked on my door again. Same careful knock, same concerned expression. She stepped inside just long enough to deliver the news. "I ran into your wife at the grocery store," she said. She looked rough, like she hadn't slept. She was arguing with someone on the phone in the parking lot, loud enough for people to stare. I nodded, neither surprised nor curious enough to ask more. But Linda wasn't finished. "My niece works at the bank on Main Street," she added. "Said your wife came in trying to cash a check that bounced, something about a loan." That word stuck. Loan. Later that night, my phone rang again. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Her voice came through strained, raw, like she'd been crying for hours. She didn't waste time easing into it. Mark was gone, left town, took the money she'd given him and disappeared. She admitted she'd taken it from our joint savings, convinced she'd get it back quickly. Now the account was empty. Credit cards maxed. No place to stay except a weekly rate motel off Highway 9. "I'm in real trouble," she said. "I need help." I listened, really listened, and what I felt wasn't anger or satisfaction. It was distance, like watching a storm from behind thick glass. She asked if she could come back, just temporarily. Sleep on the couch, figure things out, promised she wasn't asking to fix the marriage. I told her no. She cried harder, accused me of being heartless, asked how I could let her fall apart like this. I told her the truth. She didn't fall. She walked, step by step, every choice deliberate, and I wasn't responsible for catching her now that she didn't like where she landed. When I hung up, I turned my phone off and sat in the quiet kitchen. Clean counters, no clutter, no tension, just peace. And I understood something then that I hadn't before. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It just exists when chaos finally leaves. The divorce paperwork moved forward. My attorney confirmed she hadn't responded, likely couldn't afford to. The process was clinical, efficient, almost cold, and I welcomed that. Emotion had already run its course. This was just cleanup. Life settled into a rhythm I didn't know I'd been missing. Mornings at the coffee shop where the barista knew my order. Workdays that felt focused instead of draining. Evenings that belonged entirely to me. I slept better, ate better, thought clearer. Without constant emotional negotiation, everything felt lighter. Then one Saturday afternoon, as I was washing my car in the driveway, a beat-up sedan pulled up. A woman stepped out, her sister Megan. She walked toward me with urgency in her eyes. "We need to talk," she said. "No, we don't," I replied calmly, drying my hands. "She's not okay," Megan insisted. "She's working 2 jobs, barely eating, losing weight. She's family." I looked at her evenly. "She's your family, not mine." Megan's voice sharpened. "You really don't care anymore?" I paused, then answered honestly. "I care about people who didn't create their own disaster. Your sister did." Megan stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Maybe she didn't. I wasn't the same man who'd swallowed disappointment quietly anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't cruel. I was clear. "She made a mistake," Megan said. "She made a choice," I corrected, "and now she's living with it." Megan left without another word. As her car pulled away, I caught a glimpse of my ex in the passenger seat. She looked smaller, tired, defeated, and I felt nothing. No triumph, no pity, just closure forming quietly, piece by piece. That night I called my parents. We talked about normal things, weather, plans, life. My mother said I sounded happy, and for the first time in a long while, I realized she was right. Not because someone else was struggling, but because I finally wasn't carrying someone else's weight. 4 months after she walked out, my life had settled into something steady and quiet. Not exciting in the way movies make excitement look, but solid. Predictable in the best sense. I woke up when I wanted, ate what I wanted, went where I wanted. There was no one checking my tone, questioning my priorities, or rewriting reality to suit their feelings. I didn't realize how heavy that constant pressure had been until it was gone. That Tuesday night in November, rain came down hard, drumming against the windows while I sat in the living room reading a book I'd owned for years but never had the mental space to open. The house smelled like coffee and clean laundry, no noise except the rain and the turning of pages. At 9:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, my calm didn't disappear, but it did sharpen. Standing on my porch was a small group: Rachel, her mother, her sister Megan, a woman I didn't recognize, and a man in a suit holding a briefcase. They were soaked, hair damp, coats darkened by rain. Rachel looked thinner than I remembered, her face drawn, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. "Can we come in?" she asked quietly. "We can talk right here," I said. The man in the suit stepped forward. "I'm Preston Miller, legal counsel. We're here to discuss a possible reconciliation." I actually laughed, not loudly, just once. "Reconciliation," I repeated. "You brought a lawyer to ask me to take you back." Her mother spoke next, voice tight with emotion. "She's learned her lesson. She knows she made a terrible mistake." I looked at Rachel, not her mother. "Did you?" She nodded, tears running freely now. "I know I ruined everything. I know I chose wrong. I've paid for it." "Paid how?" I asked calmly. "She's working non-stop just to survive," Megan said, "barely sleeping, barely eating." I held their gaze one by one. "So now we're calling adulthood punishment?" Rachel stepped closer, rain dripping from her hair onto the porch. "Please," she said, "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for another chance." I stepped outside and gently closed the door behind me so we were all standing in the rain together. 4 months ago," I said evenly, "you told me another man needed you more than I did. You didn't hesitate. You didn't ask for time. You didn't look back." "I was confused," she whispered. "No," I said. "You were certain. You chose him. You chose his story over our marriage. You chose to walk away." The lawyer tried to interject. "If there are financial arrangements," I raised my hand. "Stop." Rain soaked through my shirt, but I didn't move. "You're not here because you miss me," I continued. "You're here because the plan failed. The money is gone. The man is gone. And suddenly the past looks safe." "That's not true," Rachel cried. It is, I replied. You don't miss me. You miss stability. You miss not being responsible for your own decisions. Her mother gasped. Her friend shook her head, but no one argued. Rachel's voice broke. Where am I supposed to go? I answered without anger. The same place everyone else goes when they make bad choices. Forward, on their own. Silence settled between us, heavier than the rain. Finally, I spoke one last time. Don't come back here. Don't call. Don't send people to speak for you. This ended the night you chose someone else. I turned, went inside, and locked the door. From the window, I watched them stand there for a moment, unsure what to do next. Then they slowly returned to their cars and drove away. I poured a glass of whiskey, sat back down with my book, and listened as the rain softened. Inside my house, everything was quiet, and for the first time in months, I knew it would stay that way. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or found strength in silence, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and leave a comment. I'll see you in the next story.